From Washington, D.C. and around the world, this is Government Matters with Mimi Geerges.
This is Government Matters, the only show covering the latest news, trends, and topics that matter to the business of government. I'm Mimi Geerges. The Defense Department's Chief Information Officer acts as the principal advisor to the Secretary of Defense for IT, information management, telecom, among others. John Sherman is the DoD's Chief Information Officer. He's also the Acting Chief Digital and AI Officer. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mimi. It's great to be here with you today.
So there's a lot that's encompassed in your role as the Department CIO, but I wanted to start with cybersecurity. One aspect of that is the transition to zero trust. Explain why the transition and where the department is in that process.
Thank you, Mimi. As CIO, with that hat on, cybersecurity is my absolute top priority, ensuring the protection of our networks, systems, and data. Zero trust is a principle that posits that the enemy is already on the network somewhere. It is a paradigm shift. Now, it's one that's been underway here throughout the federal government and private sector for a little while now. It's embodied in executive orders dating back to last year. But we here at the Department of Defense want to be a leader in the federal space on this to really move out with our very large enterprise with this new principle. To that end, we stood up a new portfolio management office to bring together the best practices and to really set the standards and principles of how we're going to move out on this, and brought an expert in from NSA, Mr. Randy Resnick, to head this PFMO. Zero trust is built, as I said, on principles that the enemy is already on your network. And the way we deal with that is constricting lateral movement throughout the network through what we call fine-grained access. And also looking at things like not signature-based analysis, but behavioral-based analysis on who's on there, and making sure we have identity, credential, and access management, or ICAM, and an entire suite of capabilities that comes at it much differently than we've been doing. And with our 4 million person enterprise between service members, civilians, and contractors, it's a big enterprise we have to get after this with, but I see it as critical in the 21st century cyber threats we're protecting against.
And the department is also moving towards enterprise cloud and in general modernizing IT. How is that going?
It's going well. We have made a lot of progress on cloud over the past number of years within the military services. Of course, our flagship effort right now is with the Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability, or JWCC, for which the procurement is underway right now. And this is going to bring us enterprise cloud capability at all three security classification levels: unclassified, secret, and top secret, from the continental United States all the way out to the tactical edge. And this is a capability we don't have right now, and it's going to be critical for things like Joint All-Domain Command and Control and the AI and Data Accelerator Initiative, among others.
You know, John, why is the DoD so behind the commercial sector in IT modernization? It's not like the department isn't high-tech enough.
I would argue we're not behind. There's pockets of real motivation and implementation we're getting after on areas like DevSecOps, and indeed with cloud throughout the services, on areas like we're doing with Spectrum and transport. So as you look across the services, the combatant commands, and the, as we call the fourth estate, the defense agencies and field activities, we are modernizing. But Mimi, we can always do better. As we look at areas like user experience, and I know that's been in the news quite a bit lately with the quote-unquote fix our computers mantra that's been out there on social media and elsewhere. There are things we need to do better at the user end of this. So that airman at Tinker Air Force Base, when she logs on, she doesn't see the little circle spinning and so on. It's a hardware solution. It might be transport on the base or long-haul transport. It might be what we're doing in terms of cybersecurity scans, doing that smarter. But I'll tell you, as an operational user myself for many years, this resonates with me as a CIO, and I want to make sure that airman, Marine, soldier, sailor, guardian, or civilian, wherever they're at, is going to have the very best user experience. And this is what gets me out of bed every morning.
Well, looking at the mission side, what is your office's role in enabling JADC2, 5G network capabilities, that kind of thing?
So JADC2 relies on many key capabilities, but we in CIO are providing many of them, and you named a lot of them. JWCC for that enterprise cloud capability, cybersecurity based on zero trust. what we're doing in terms of transport, both terrestrial and ensuring SATCOM, working with Space Force, for example. All those pieces coming together. And with my other hat on as the acting CDAO, it really is about the data as well. Any data, anywhere, anytime, to be able to stay inside the decision circle of our pacing challenge of China or anybody else, to really make sure we can have military effects where we need them. So CIO plays a key role with JADC2.
Well, each of the military services has a CIO. So how do you interact with them? How do you coordinate so that you're all moving in the same direction and you're not duplicating effort?
That's a great question. As a team of teams, this is something I learned on the intelligence community side. As an enterprise CIO, you're only as successful as how you can bring your colleagues along, in this case with the services, capitalizing on their ideas, on their concepts as a team, but also setting enterprise goals, strategies, standards to make sure, and I say this a lot about the rising tide, raising all boats here, but I really see the interaction I have with the military department CIOs, the Joint Staff J6, the defense agencies and field activities as critical. If they're not successful, I'm not successful. And that's how I proceed with my job as CIO.
Well, let's talk about the FY23 budget request. What's your role in that, and how much of a say do you get in setting priorities?
With the FY23 or any budget, excuse me, I set early in the cycle, I set the priorities for the IT and cybersecurity ecosystem through guidance I promulgate, and then I have what's called budget certification on the back end before the budget is fully prepared. And that's where I have a lot of conversations with the military department CIOs, with the folks I have within DoD CIO, to make sure we are getting after the priorities on a lot of areas we just talked about with cybersecurity, C3, enterprise cloud, et cetera, SAP IT, special access program IT, to make sure we are setting the goals we need to get after and then holding the enterprise accountable to do what we need to do. And so that's my role statutorily as the CIO. But again, it takes a team of teams. We just don't throw something over the transom and expect the MILDEPs to catch it. This is what we do through our governance and a lot of rigorous communication and dialogue.
You know, we're over 2 years now from the start of the pandemic. I wonder what have been the most critical changes you made in facilitating that transition to remote work?
It dates back to our collaboration capabilities initially with commercial virtual remote, or CVR, which was a capability based on Microsoft Teams and that Office 365 suite, but it was at impact level 2, or IL2 as we call it. And since last year, we've moved to what we call DoD 365 at the impact level 5 level because of the cybersecurity environment that we live in. So this is working all across the enterprise, enabling remote work. Now we had the bring your own approved device previously. Now we're setting some new standards. We have a number of pilots underway, again, because of cybersecurity. But in terms of what we had to do with the fundamentals, not only with the 365 capabilities, but areas like transport, cybersecurity, as I partnered closely with Paul Nakasone with his cybercom hat on to make sure we're upholding the cyber standards and listening to the MILDEPs who are making the military departments and giving us insight as to what their users need. That's how we've changed the paradigm.
All right, John, quick pause here and we'll come back and continue. Welcome back. My guest is John Sherman. He's the CIO for the Defense Department and Acting Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer. John, shifting now to your other hat, which is the Acting Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer role. This is a new office just established recently. Why was it created and what will it do?
First and foremost, Mimi, it was created to provide decision advantage to the Secretary of Defense, the Deputy Secretary, our combatant commanders, and all the way to our battlefield leaders. Using our data, which we have a lot of, using advanced analytics, and using rapid insertion of digital capabilities, and also to break down any institutional barriers we may have had previously among those functions to be able to get the very best outcomes and data-driven, data-led decisions, whether it's on boardroom issues or battlefield issues, to really unlock that, and especially given the environment we're living in with a very sophisticated pacing challenge in China and other potential challengers in that space.
Well, let's talk about practical applications then. I mean, how is the Defense Department using data to support European command in the current war in Ukraine?
Probably the most obvious one would be the AI and Data Accelerator Initiative, ADA, as Deputy Secretary Hicks has talked about and other leaders in the department. We have an ADA team supporting U.S. European Command as we look at things like logistics flow and other military requirements there, working with the Chief Data Officer there in Stuttgart and working with other command requirements and allies to make sure that we're getting General Todd Walters and his entire team everything they need to be able to support U.S. and NATO priorities in this current crisis. And it's not only forward in EUCOM, it's back here in the Pentagon, for example, supporting the Joint Staff on areas like logistics requirement, force flows, looking at refugee activities forward in Poland and elsewhere, and bringing data-driven insights to what had been previously perhaps very manual processes, and also not only supporting EUCOM, but Transportation Command in Illinois and elsewhere as they're working to get our forces into Eastern and Central Europe, and also those other issues that we need to do to respond to this crisis.
You know, what's the hardest part, John, of making data the game changer on the battlefield it has the potential of being?
It really is unlocking the power of the data. It is a lot of pick and shovel work of working with all the components all across this vast DoD enterprise to make sure that data is not being kept in a place that it can't be accessed, not by anything malicious, but by folks just not knowing how to tag it, how to catalog it, raising it up into ecosystems like the Advana platform that is part of CDAO, to make sure that it has visibility, and then the rigor from the very most senior leaders down to folks on the ops floor and elsewhere, learning what it means to be a data-led organization. Everybody has skin in the game on this, and it requires training, it requires investment from the very top. And this is where Deputy Secretary Hicks has been a critical leader, where we have corporate sessions known as DMAGs, where we have data that's presented by component leaders like myself on what we're doing, for example, on IT and other modernization, or it can be personnel and readiness or acquisition, to really put senior leaders on the spot with that, which then cascades all throughout the enterprise. It takes a lot of work, and this is where previously we had the CDO organization that is now part of CDAO that did a lot of that hard work to unlock the data.
You know, it's hard enough to make data interoperable and accessible across the services. What about international allies and partners?
That's critical as we work with Five Eyes, with NATO, and other partners all across the ecosystem to make sure that we have a lot of dialogue about what data standards mean. We have governance fora, just like I have with my CIO hat on, CDO and now CDAO will have, as we talk to partners. As a matter of fact, I'm talking to my Canadian colleague this afternoon. We're going to talk about IT and data and other things like that. It requires leaning in to make sure we're working with those key allies and working through issues and actual use cases of where data is going to be needed for combat operations, for logistics, non-combat issues, et cetera. We all have to lean in on it.
All right. Well, John, nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for making the time for us and being on the program.
Thank you, Mimi. It's been a pleasure to be here today.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.